Welcome on into Daggerheart Characters. Today we're going to have a little bit of fun and we're going to create a character with each of the subclasses for a homebrewed class that I created, the Chosen One. A video should have already come out, should have been recently, where I go over the Chosen One class, but of course we're going to kind of see the features as we talk about them in this video. So why don't we pull up. This is the Chosen One, by the way, starting Evasion 10, starting hit point 7, your fate. Spend 3 hope to reroll either the fear or the hope die on a failed roll. Additionally, the GM loses a fear. Destiny's Shield, gain a +1 bonus to your armor score. So you're going to see the armor scores are going to have that calculated in, of course. And once per long rest, when you mark an armor slot, you may reduce the damage by 2 thresholds, as well as your entire party gaining a hope at the beginning of every session, just like a halflings would. Fun fact, I wrote this free form, and then I decided to go and check the halflings writing out, and I believe it was exactly the same. I didn't read it a second time to make sure every word was, but I believe I ended up wording it exactly the same. I was pretty proud of that. So let's open up here. The first subclass that we're going to do is called the Neo subclass. And so this is a martial based subclass, and the thing about this class, or really this subclass, but the class as a whole, is that for this subclass you get to choose between the 3 domains of Blade, Bone, and Valor. So no spellcasting trait, of course, but at every point when you're choosing your domain cards, you get to choose from all 3 of those classes, all 3 of those domains. So that is something that I think was worth pointing out. So how do we start to build a K-2SO, our Neo subclass from the Chosen One class? Of course, he is a droid. It is a droid. And this is what we're going to look like at Tier 1. So I was a little surprised that it was at Tier 1 because I forgot that I saved this at Tier 1. A lot of these I've just been doing Tier 2. But I knew I was going to make this full video here for our K-2SO. That is my cat, if you can hear her making noise. Hopefully she doesn't mess with the sound here for the recording. So let's start off, of course, at level 1, our heritage and our ancestry. And look at those features that I chose for K-2SO. So we start out with our ancestry, the Clank. Fun fact, I was just originally going to make this like a general character. I was going to actually look into making like a leader type of character. And then I looked at the ancestries, I got Clank in here, and I'm like, okay, well actually that would be really fun, like a Chosen One Clank. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like K-2SO would be fun to design. So it was kind of a random mistake. I don't know how he popped into my head. I guess I was trying to think of Clanks and of course Star Wars droids and stuff popped into my head immediately for that time, but for that purpose. So for our ancestry features, we have purposeful design. Decide who made you and for what purpose. At character creation, choose one of your experiences that best aligns with the purpose and give it a permanent +1 bonus to it. And so we are going to beef up our experiences through this. We are not a full tank. We are not a full best martial artist. We're not a full, bard. We have part of our charm. We are charming, and part of our charm can come from our strength. That will be part of the domain cards that we choose, and I think that fits in with K-2SO, who is fairly charming, sarcastic, funny, but also when he needs to get his way, he can use his intimidating presence, the strength that he naturally has, in order to maybe make someone bend to his will a little bit easier. And the other ancestry feature that we have is efficient, so when you take a short rest, you can choose a long rest move instead of a short rest move. So that is going to be something that we'll play into, is being able to recover quickly, because we don't invest in as much as we could, maybe some of the things like stress and whatnot. So those are the ancestry features. And for the heritage, Orderborn made the most sense to me for him. I mean, he is kind of built to be within the Imperial Army. So the Orderborn get this dedicated feature. Record 3 sayings or values your upbringing instilled in you once per rest. When you describe how you embody one of these principles through your current action, you can roll a d20 as your hope die. There's a lot of the chosen one here, there's a lot of making sure we're successful when we do things, so this will help along with that, and this gives us a wider array of ways that we can maybe get boosts in different situations for this character, because we're not going to really be spending hope or stress too much for our domain cards. We're going to use that stress for our hope feature, of course, as well as something like this, as well as helping our allies plenty as much as we can, as well as adding our experiences when we're making rolls. We really want to lean into some of those features for this character based on how I built it. Of course, K-2SO is incredibly strong, and you definitely could make a more martial character than I did. So we see our ancestry features right there, and then these are the community features for the Orderborn that I came up with. I've got a bad feeling about these are just quotes of his from the movies. So he is like a strategy analyst. He can, he'll say, hey, we have a 39.6% chance of success here. He's a little bit of a risk assessment bot. An insurance company could use his. Why did that happen? We're just going to have to deal with that. So I've got a bad feeling about. I find the answer vague and unconvincing. A little bit of a truth teller, maybe. You could use that in situations when you're not trusting someone. And oppression breeds rebellion. He is very anti-fascist, authoritarian, because he becomes a part of the rebellion and everything. So that was something that I really wanted to bring into play here, because I didn't quite bring it into play with the experiences. Now I could have, and maybe chose a different quote, but when I saw that quote, I was like, okay, I'll use that, and then we'll go with some other routes. So for the experiences, to start with, we grabbed Enforcer and Strategic Analyst, and I'll just point him out. Of course, we got empathetic. He does often show that he's a pretty empathetic for a bot. So that was something I wanted to bring into play here, help with the presence, any types of roles where maybe he's trying to be empathetic in order to help, the team get their way with something maybe. And of course, loyalty. He's incredibly loyal, and we are going to be a team player in that asset. We're not quite a leader. Once again, we're not exactly a full tank. We're not going to be exactly the most damage dealing, but we're going to do a lot of things to help the team out. So to start out, we get our cards were Untouchable and I Am Your Shield. Untouchable just gives you a bonus half of your agility, which is always halves are always rounded up in this game. And I Am Your Shield, which allows you to spend a stress in order to get in the way of an attack and take the damage yourself essentially, or use an armor slot. So those were those decisions that I made. We start off with 7 hit points, so we have already added those in. And for our weaponry, I chose a mace, because he uses, they get a baton. Droids just have a baton, so I felt like the mace was the most representative of the baton of the starting weaponry, especially when considering we have invested in our strength here at level 1. So strength is the trait for this, D8 plus 1 damage, and we also grabbed a tower shield here as our secondary weapon, which will take a -1 to our evasion score, which started at 10, and +2 to our armor score. Now we're also getting a +1 to our evasion thanks to our Untouchable domain card, but we're also getting another -1 to our evasion from Chainmail. But I did want to try to keep this bot on the evasive side. I didn't go all the way into investing in evasion or getting it all the way up throughout character creation here, but because we aren't the super toughest of bots here. They might be in world, but just the build that I ended up going for. So I wanted to keep some of that evasion throughout. So that's why I didn't go with the more heavy plated choice here early on. So we end up with a -1 to our evasion score, even because we offset that a little bit. And our base thresholds and armor, we end up with 4 armor slots at this level. We get 4 for our base score. We get +1 from the subclass feature that gave us +1 armor slot, and we get +2 from our tower shield. So good amount of armor slots here, strong starting hit points. We have some pretty strong armor on. We're going to hit pretty well, and we're not the most evasive, but we're definitely not the least evasive either. And we're also pretty well-rounded in our abilities because we also got that +1 for all of our subclass features. So actually +1 armor is a class feature. If I just called that a subclass feature, that was a mistake. So I started out with +2 to strength, +1 agility, +1 knowledge, and we could have done with +1 anything for this build specifically outside of knowledge, but we are going to use our knowledge, and we are going to end up using our instinct, and we want to beef up some of that presence as well, because we're going to add our strength to presence rolls, so that is going to be something of ours. So when we got that +1 to 2 different trait scores, I beefed up the instinct and the presence from 0s to 1s. So that's how we end up with this at level 1 for all of our traits. So here is the top of the Tier 2 sheet. At Tier 2, I increased my traits twice. I chose an extra domain card at level 2, so we'll get to those shortly. I increased my evasion up by 1, I increased my hit point slot up by 1, and I increased my experiences, +1 to 2 different experiences. So this is what we end up with. Obviously, I increased my strength once, increased the presence, the knowledge, and shouldn't there be another +1? Oh, you know what? And the agility +1, because we are going to get a -1 to our agility. At Tier 2, I chose the improved full plate armor for my Tier 2 choice. I just choose one new weapon, piece of armor, or secondary weapon at each tier in order to make sure that I'm not over-tooling these. But of course, I also get my pick, so it's like based on what I would want. So I chose the improved full plate armor for this. So this gives us a -2 to our evasion, part of the reason why we're going to invest back into that evasion and continue to invest in this agility, because we do want that untouchable card to be somewhat valuable while we have it in. It's never going to be as valuable as it could be, but I think that just having that little boost to our evasion, keeping that evasion score decent while also helping to improve these other things is going to be good, because this is going to be our armor for the rest of the way. So we're not going to, once again, that's part of why we're not going to end up being the beefiest, but we needed a blaster and we needed to improve our primary weapon. So I only get 3 choices. I decided to improve the armor here, so I went all in and chose the best armor that I could get for the thresholds, the armor slots, and that comes at a cost. -2 to the evasion, -1 to the agility. We covered that. So at Tier 2, our evasion ends up going down to 9 there. And you saw these already. We increased that presence, we increased that knowledge, because our cards, let's go over the cards that we chose. Oh, by the way, we invested in our experiences, and we got that +1 experience from our, originally from being a clank as well. So we have, we get more out of our experiences when we use them, and I do plan on using them with this character. So for our card choices, I'll pull them up, but as you can see, I chose bold presence, strategic approach, tactician, and I ended up going with goad them on. A soldier's bond is always great, especially when you're planning on using hope. However, we got to make choices, and that's such an easy one and common one to choose, so I don't want to choose it every time that I'm making characters either. I chose bold presence here, so when you make a presence roll, you can spend a hope to add your strength to the roll. Additionally, once per rest, when you would gain a condition, you can describe how your bold presence aids you in the situation and avoid gaining the condition, so that will definitely help us to, to do what we want to do. And we also took strategic approach. Remember, at level 2, I said we were going to take a second card immediately. So I took strategic approach immediately. That's why we were investing in our knowledge. After a long rest, place a number of tokens equal to your knowledge on this card. The first time that you move within close range of an adversary and make an attack against them, you can spend 1 token to choose one of the following options. So this goes right along with our risk assessment type of abilities, our strategic ness of being the character, so you can make it attack with an advantage. We might just, be able to quickly catch something that could give us advantage. You can clear its stress on an ally. Plenty of times that K-2SO comes to the rescue for his allies in Star Wars. So that is something that we can do. Or you could add a D8 to your damage roll, and at times we aren't hitting the hardest, so at times getting a little bit of boost to our damage is going to be helpful. So that's why I chose Bold Presence and Strategic Approach. I thought they were very K-2SO. This character, for clarity, it's not optimized all the way to be, just the best character. I tried sticking more into K-2SO things. There's obviously different ways that you could take this. The other thing that I took was Tactician, because we want to be there for our teams. This is a card I always look at and I kind of scoff, but I think I underestimate it too. So when you help an ally, they can spend a hope to add one of your experiences to their roll alongside your advantage die. So, we have invested in those experiences too, so that's going to give them all the more reason to maybe spend that hope in order to help with their roll. And when we make a tag team roll, which is I think definitely something that we're going to want to do, you can roll a d20 as your hope die, so make that more successful. And then at 4th tier, obviously, kind of wanted to take Fortified Armor. I think Deadly Focus would make sense. K-2SO can he can focus in an attack and be definitely more deadly than the K-2SO that I've created, but I ended up going for Godemon. We're leaning into kind of the charm of K-2SO, especially if I'm playing this character. Like, that's where I would probably lean into his sarcasm and just his one-liners. He's just full of them. So Godemon is going to help to do that, and actually, because I just wanted to verify that I remembered K-2SO correctly, I'm not like the biggest Star Wars fan, I just Googled, like, is he charming or something? Or no, does he goad on his opponents at times in fights? And actually, this is, like, an ability in one of the Star Wars games out there for him, so that told me all I needed to know. For Godemon, it can describe how you taunt a target within close range, then make a presence roll against them, and we can add our strength to that presence roll if we really want to make this successful. On a success, the target must mark a stress, and the next time that the GM spotlights them, they must target you with an attack, which they make with disadvantage. This felt very much in line with K-2SO, in my opinion, so that was the choice that I made. So that is going to bring us on to our Tier 3 build. Take a moment while I go to look at, our minor damage and severe damage. By the way, as you can see, I'm going at the end of the tier. So this is by 7th level. The last one, Tier 2, is by 4th level. What did I do at Tier 3? Increase the traits twice yet again. So, of course, invested in strength, should have invested in agility again, in knowledge one more time, and I think instinct, because we're going to be now getting a card where our instinct is going to matter. So I prepped ahead of time for that new addition to our domain cards. And then I upgraded the subclass to, I'll show you what we get as we specialize in the Chosen One, or actually I should say in the Neo subclass. And then we increased our evasion by 1, increased our stress slots by 1, and increased our experiences by 1. And you might be wondering, how did we get this extra hope if we increased our stress? Vitality. Hit point, not hope. How did we get this extra hit point if we increased our stress? Well, yeah. So for one of the class features is Vitality, which allows you to choose between 2 of increasing your hit points, increasing your stress by 1 each, or increasing your damage thresholds by 2. So I chose to increase my damage thresholds and gain an extra hit point slot. And by the way, that card just makes sense to take, because you could increase 1 hit point slot, or you could grab another card that's not going to count against your loadout and increase a hit point slot and something else, or 1 stress slot, a hit stress slot, and something else. So Vitality is like just the most no-brainer card in this game, outside of you're not planning on, there are some builds where you wouldn't use it, but by and large, it's just such a no-brainer card to take. So let's look at the specialization feature before we move on. For our specialization, we get Rewrite Code, which means that we get to take an additional domain card of 3rd level or lower, and our loadout maximum is now going to be 6 instead of 5. So that's pretty nice, and we will see that what extra card that we took. So let's just hop on down to our domain card, since that's kind of where we were at. For our 5th level card, we took Know Thy Enemy. This is the one where we're going to make an instinct roll against them. So that's why we beefed up that instinct a little bit. On a success, going to have to spend a hope. Definitely, have hope that we could spend for things. Hopefully we have an ally who can help increase our hope, but we also do get an extra hope at least at the beginning of a session. So on a success, spend a hope and ask the GM for one set of information about the target from the following: their unmarked hit points and stress, their difficulty and damage thresholds, their tactics and standard attack damage dice, their features and experiences. And this is something where we can definitely use strategic analyst. We could add this if we really want to know our enemy. If we really think we need to nail this, we could boost up that roll using strategic analyst, or we could just use strategic analyst at any time, of course, too. But maybe we could use that to gain a little bit more information. Maybe we can bargain a deal with our GM or something for that as well. But this is just such a K-2SO feature. Like, he does this. He analyzes the enemy. Additionally, on a success, you can mark a stress to remove a fear from the GM's fear pool. So we have a couple ways that we can remove fear from our GM's fear pool. I talked about vitality already, so we took vitality. We also went down and ended up taking, and there's so many cards that we could take, but we got that 3rd level or lower card. And I ended up taking Versatile Fighter because we are going to add a blaster. And blasters use finesse. And finesse is the one trait, I should say guns in this game use finesse. And this is the one trait that I have not boosted. I couldn't go without giving K-2SO the blaster. We need to have the shooting weapon. So Versatile Fighter will allow us to use our strength instead of finesse in order to shoot off our blaster, also known as a black powder revolver, which we'll look at in a moment. And also when you deal damage, you can mark a stress to use the maximum result of one of your damage dice instead of rolling it. Once again, we don't always deal the most damage. We're not going to invest in our proficiency at all. Yet we're kind of tanky in front lines. For the most part, we're front linesy. So that's a nice little bonus. When we're facing the big opponent, we can add just a little bit more damage to try to get up to the next threshold of damage and make them marking more hit points. And then I also, at 6th level, I took Recovery. Yes, so could have gone different routes. We're going to end up taking a couple of 6th level cards. Recovery during a short rest, you can choose a long rest downtime move instead. So that means because of our clank ability, we're going to actually be able to just choose plenty of long rest downtime moves instead of short rest downtime moves throughout. So we are going to really be able to plenish our spell selves. And you can spend a hope to let an ally do the same, and we are partially being like a team support kind of guy here. I mean, for sure we are. With Know Thy Enemy, we're trying to contribute towards the team. Bold presence, Know Thy Enemy. This strategic approach gives us a way that we can help an ally of ours. Tactician helps our allies. Goad them on helps our allies. So, yeah, very much we are being a team player as much as anything here. Oh no, I meant to be showing the well, I just realized while I was talking I didn't have this screen up. I was supposed to. I thought I did. I don't know how I didn't, or at what point I might have turned it off, maybe to reference the other sheet. So I will just have to fix that a little bit in post so you can see the cards, but the mouse is just going to be waving around wildly on the screen unless it gets covered up by whatever visual I'm using to fix that. I also just noticed that we're cutting off what we got going on down here for the community feat and the ancestry feat when I would have covered those earlier. It's not a perfect world, but the weapon that we invested in at tier 3 was the black powder revolver, and this has this is what we're going to call our blaster. It has we would have to fire with finesse, but we can use our strength whenever we have our our versatile fighter card out. And it deals d6 plus 8 physical damage. On an attack, you got to roll a d6. If the dice lands on the 6, we got to mark a stress, but luckily we don't need our stress for a whole lot anyways, but we did get ourselves one extra stress slot to help with that as well. Not that we're going to be using, we're not going to be using the blaster too often, probably. It really depends the type of mission that we're on. So I think that covers everything from tier 3. That's going to bring us on to tier 4. There we go. Look at our tier 4. Gentlemen, we at tier 4 invested in our traits. Just once, I figured we could have, of course, invested in it more, but because at this point our armor is not going to be so top-notch anymore that we're using. We're not investing in the armor or upgrading the tower shield anymore, so our armor slots are staying the same. Like, we're starting to be less and less tanky at this point, so I did invest a little bit more in some of the stress and the hit points, and in our evasion to keep that up, etc. So that left me with just increasing the traits once. We got the agility up to 3, so that way we get a +2 to our evasion while we have our untouchable domain card out. Of course, increased our strength up. And, you know, I figured the instinct bonus is enough, good enough, and the knowledge bonus too. We get 3 tokens on that card per rest. Like, that's good enough. We're going to be switching cards out and stuff too, so, like, 3 is enough. You know, we'll be fine. More would be great. Having those higher would be great, but we just invested in other things. Of course, our proficiency goes up to 4 by, you know, at 8th level. So this is our 10th level character when we're going down the stretch here. Our minor damage ends up at 25, or sorry, I should say our major damage threshold ends up at 25, and our severe damage threshold ends up at 40. We end up with, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 hit point slots and 9 stress slots. And maybe we don't need that many stress slots, but we do end up picking a few domain cards that are going to ask for more stress. So at tier 4, we increased our traits once, our hit points, our stress, our experiences, our hit points, and our stress. So traits and hit points, stress and experiences, hit point, stress is the order that I did them in. But of course, as always, you know, as you play these characters, you might end up diverging more and more from what I did while making the character. But that's what I did for the character. So we have improved our primary weapon here. We moved on into creating onto the impact gauntlet. I just wanted something that did the most damage ultimately. So hopefully we could get the impact gauntlet if we were playing this, D10 plus 11 physical damage, and on a hit we could spend a hope. Now we're going to use our hope for a lot of things. It's getting spread around a little bit, but this is a good thing to have to knock a target to far range. So a little bit of field, a little bit of control on the battlefield is where I was going with that. It doesn't hurt, and the rest, you know, stays the same. We just get 1 new weapon or armor per class. So there are our final traits. We got agility at 3, strength at 5, finesse at -1, instinct 2, presence 2, knowledge 3, and of course agility would be 4, but it gets a -1. But because we always round up, we still get the +2 for untouchable, so that all works well. So one way that we could beef up our damage is by spending a hope to put this enforcer feature. We could also improve our, we could do a lot of things with it, but that's one way that we could use this. So I very well might have put this up to +5, but I just, whatever. But we invested in our experiences yet again. So, but getting enforcer up there is one way where we could add to this baseline of damage when we are hitting, to help get to help deal more damage threshold wise. And I think that just brings us on to our evasion ended up at 11. The armor has not changed. Yeah, that's going to bring us on to the domain card choices. So this time, let's bring that up. Well, okay, so you can see I chose Shrug It Off, Rage Up, and Unyielding Armor. We didn't choose a new one. So Shrug It Off isn't that a 7th level card here? At 8th level, we went down, grabbed Shrug It Off. When you would take damage, you can mark a stress to reduce the severity of the damage by 1 threshold. When you do, roll a 6 on a result of 3 or lower, place this card in your vault. It only costs 1 stress to take out, at least 2. And then at 8th level, I actually went all the way down, and we wanted to make ourselves, K-2SO is pretty strong. So I came back down for Rage Up. Before you make an attack, you can mark a stress. Another reason here is we finally invested more in our stress. So part of the reason we invested in the stress and part of the reason that we can take these cards is because now, we might be using our stress a little bit more. So before you make an attack, you can mark a stress to gain a bonus to your damage roll equal to twice your strength, and you can rage up twice per attack. So that is a huge way where when we're, when we're beating down on the big bad dude, we can do that. So we passed up on Battle Cry because that's not really our type of thing. Breaking Blow, would make sense, would be nice. But once again, I wanted a way to boost up that damage. I thought of going full Surge, but I ended up going with the route that I did. And then that brings us to 10th level, and we just help our tankiness here. Unyielding armor. When you would mark an armor slot, roll a number of d6s equal to your proficiency. If any roll is 6, reduce the severity by 1 threshold without marking an armor slot. So that is a nice way to help preserve these armor slots, help us to be able to use them all the more to help our allies and whatnot. And we increased our hit points a little bit more and make us a little bit more beefy because, once again, the minor damage, the severe damage aren't quite all the way tuned up for for a tank. So we need a little more beef, and we need to help make these armor slots go as far as we can make them go. So there we go. That is K-2SO. Oh no, I've done it again. I was referencing the sheet not this one. I was referencing K-2SO. And I didn't have the sheet up, so I will have to just put that on in post to show what I was talking about at the time of talking about it. Giving myself a lot of extra work by not just going back and double checking what the heck you guys can see at any point in time. But here is going to be a bonus character because I went through and I created this, but I'm not going to make another video on making the Chosen One Neo subclass character. There will be a Jesus video, I think, because I created that already. But here is what we ended up with at tier 4. Another way you could go with the Chosen One for Neo, and we'll go through the Master feature because I'm going to upgrade this all the way to the Master feature because I was kind of trying to show those off. But I ended up going with the Seaborn Samia, which gives us, the Samia gives us Natural Climber and Nimbles, and Nimbles is going to help our evasion, and Natural Climber just going to help make us more agile, which is, we got 5 agility, 5 strength. That's definitely a part of this character. More easily better to balance and stuff. And I went Seaborn because, first of all, there are monkeys that are seaside. They live seaside. So I would choose from that. I think it's the crab cracking macaca or whatever that type of monkey is called. I would have to go for the visual appearance of this if I truly wanted to keep it to be real life realistic, but whatever. But they're not as strong probably as this. Nonetheless, I like Seaborn because it allows us to add +1 2 rolls for the feature of it. And this character is really about not ever missing. Every roll that we take, we have ways of re-rolling it. We have ways of making ourselves more likely to hit. That's why we kept the legendary broadsword here, +1 to our attack rolls. We don't want to fail. And we have a lot of ways to make sure that we're going to succeed when we're doing things. So that is definitely a part of this character. So for the traits of our Seaborn Samia Neo build, this is not an actual Neo, whereas for the Jesus subclass, I did do Jesus, but here we got agility, strength at 5, finesse, instinct, presence at 0, and knowledge at 3. And we want those agility and strength up there because we took both bare bones and untouchable, and we're going to always have those in our loadout. And it's nice because we get 6 loadout cards, so that makes it easier to keep 2 in there at all times. As you can see, we were also able to boost up our evasion quite well here. In part because of this +3 to agility. So we have a 17 evasion. We also have 9 armor slots. Our damage thresholds are strong here, 27 and 50. We got a good amount of hit points. Not going to have to use a lot of stress, so that's just that, 7 stress there. Hit points not beefed up all the way, but still pretty strong. And we did beef up our proficiency all the way here, as you can see on the screen, to 6, because we are going to be hitting hard for the most part when we can. So our legendary broadsword was our tier 4 item that we chose. Deals d8 plus 9 physical damage, and we get a +1 to attack rolls because, once again, we're more worried with just succeeding every time that we're doing something. Our secondary weapon is going to be a returning axe, just to give us a little bit of range here. So this also works on our agility to attack and anything within close range, and is a d6 plus 4. By the way, if you're wondering how I got 2 up to +5, remember we got a +1 as part of our subclass base feature to two different traits. So I didn't boost one up to 6. I went a little bit more, well-rounded, but wanted to get agility and strength here up to 5, at least up to that top number without getting any extra boosts. So a returning axe returns to your hand after being thrown. So this is a nice way if we are restrained or anything like that. It just gives us a little bit of ability to attack from a distance. And we can always switch out and pull out a tower shield, which gives us 2 more armor slots. So we effectively have 11 armor slots actually for this character. So that's pretty awesome. And our inventory weapon is Axe of Fortunatus, which is a 2-handed weapon. This is our tier 3 item, I believe, because we never needed to improve our armor since we're using bare bones as a domain card. So the Axe of Fortunatus mark a stress to re-roll a failed attack roll. So once again, another way to just make sure that we are hitting, and this just gets to hit a little bit harder, but the thing is it does magic damage. There are physical damage ones that do more damage, which I really did want the max damage, but I also wanted a way to be a little bit more versatile, so if we are facing opponents that are resistant to physical damage, we can put our shield away, we can put our axe away, we can put our broadsword away, and pull out this big old axe of ours, which deals magical damage. And, once again, has a higher ceiling, does a little bit more damage than our legendary broadsword, of course, because it's a 2-handed weapon. So, we need to hit harder, or we need to deal magical damage. We have that as a backup. So quite versatile. We can do a little bit from range. If we're it's been a long day, or we're in a really long fight and we're using those armor slots, we got a couple of bonus armor slots to back up into as well. And that loss of 1 point to evasion by pulling out that shield won't be killing us. So that brings us to, I think, the domain cards. So we grabbed Bare Bones. This costs nothing to put in, but we're going to be always using that. And we grabbed Untouchable, which gains a bonus to evasion equal to half our agility. Bare Bones just gives us these nice strong base features that aren't quite as good as like tier 4 armor, but close enough, and gives us 3 plus our strength for our armor score, which is part of how we got that up as high, plus the +1 for our class. At 2nd level, I got Strategic Approach and Body Basher. So Body Basher is going to allow us to add our strength to our damage rolls, which is not in what you were seeing on the screen before. At 3rd level, I chose Brace. When you mark an armor slot to reduce incoming damage, you can mark a stress to mark an additional armor slot. And then, of course, I went with Vitality for my 5th level option, which meant that I delayed going until 6th level, upgrading into my specialization, where we got to grab another 3rd level card. And I grabbed Scramble at 3rd level. Scramble, once per rest when a creature within melee range would deal damage, you can avoid the attack, safely move out of range. So a way to not even have to use an armor slot or take any hit points from a more devastating attack we would save that for. And of course, Recovery we've covered in this video. I did grab Full Surge at 8th level, which is +2 to all of our traits, which is definitely helpful for our character like this. Mark 3 stress to do this. We don't have a lot asking for our stress, so this is a nice boost, and it's once per long rest for the entirety of the rest. And I also chose a second 8th level card by the name of Battle Cry to give our team a little bit of a boost once per long rest. And then at that I would have grabbed at 9th level, and then at 10th level I took 2 cards at 10th level, and I grabbed both Unyielding Armor and Swift Step. So Swift Step would allow us to clear a stress, gain a hope. We use our hope. We don't have a lot of stress, so I thought that was something very nice to have, as well as Unyielding Armor, once again, because we do have a lot of armor slots. Hey, that can help us to get those armor slots going all the further. So there we go. That was a fun build that I made as well. Thank you very, very much for tuning on in. Have a good one. Peace out.